Let me give you a statistic. There are 9 systems in this state that serve 40% of the population. 9 drinking water systems. And there are an additional 131, I think, 130 thereabout systems that supply water to another 40%. 20% of the population is served by something around 1,200 systems, public water supply systems. Now, I live on a farm out west of El Reno, and I couldn't live where I live without the small rural water system that I'm on. And I am very grateful that that system is there. I'm not always grateful for the leadership of it, but I'm very, very grateful that that thing is there. But I pay $90, and my city cousins in Oklahoma City pay what? I don't know. What do you pay there?
About 30.
And as the pressure of these increasing costs and increasing regulations go up, if you're a small system, you're going to pay more and more and more and more. Now, I don't have the answer to that, but at some point we've got to give, I think, some serious thought to how we consolidate drinking water systems in the state, because it's pretty pricey out there for those of us that are on small systems.
So what if the state gets to going and we work our way towards 2060 on conserving water, which means that these rural water districts are going to generate less money because we're learning how to use less water. So we're kind of, Dennis?
Well, here's the thing. Are you really using less water, or, what the goal is not to use any more water than we're using now. Well, I guarantee you, even, I don't care which system you go, you're going to have at least 10 to 15% water leak right now. At least. Some of these places are going to have 25 to 30%. There's the biggest area that you can, that you can really save. The other thing is more intelligent use of water. I mean, not only in just the household, but also in manufacturing.
Because there's going to be a bunch more of us wanting to take a bath.
Let me just tell you that there's a very, very famous with me at least, story of a city in town in northwest Oklahoma that was sending treated water back down the well. That gets pretty expensive.
Yeah.
So I think someone had
One thing that came out of the comprehensive water plan is the fact that between now and the year 2060, that we need to spend approximately $81 billion. And you remember 2 years ago or a year ago, whenever we had the state question that we were going to give the OWRB the $300 million of the state's credit so they can borrow this. To me, that is where, we got to have cities start to change their way. In fact, Oklahoma City, they've already started changing the way that they're allowing people to use water to water their lawns. That is one thing, but if today we could go out and fix every line in the state of Oklahoma, that would cut back on and he was talking about the cost. You got a lot of water districts that have like 30% water loss. Well, 40% even. I've got one in mind that's almost 50%. And the thing about it is, you think about the cost of treating that water. We're treating water that's being lost. That's going to be saving us a lot of money.
Yeah.
One point I would like to make too is, I agree with these gentlemen, we don't need the federal government. I mean, DEQ is a lot more friendly, nicer, gentler than the EPA is. And I can tell you that because I have worked with them. And on numerous occasions, whenever I would have a water district that would be having problems, and we had a water district that was going like that, Steve, and I want to tell you something, he is a very patient man, put up with what he did, because he could have really lowered the boom, but like he told me, and I've heard it on numerous occasions, and that is that it's not gonna do us any good to find those people, and then they need to use that money to fix something in their plant.
That's right.
And so what I'm saying is, DEQ and WRB are not, they're not our foes, they're our friends. And in this one instance, the OWRB stepped up and helped this water district tremendously, and they worked with the DEQ to straighten things out. Whereas if it had been the EPA, sayonara, those people would have had to, seek some water sources other ways. So I take my hats off to these two agencies, and I want to tell you something. This one, whenever we're having problems with this one water district, the DEQ was very, very busy in the northern part of the state where there were some towns without water, but yet they were able to send someone down to this water district to help them straighten their problems out. And they were talking about different problems, about the quality of water. The one thing that no one said up here, and that is the quality of the people that are running the water systems. Because that was our problem in that one water district. It was nothing more than somebody that was their water, had their water company that was really, doing things. That they would come down and the engineers would show them how to do something, and the next day the guy would turn around and do things the way that, he thought it ought to be done, instead of listening to engineers.
Selina, do you have anything to add about the city of Eufaula and the?
Well, I think a lot of it's been covered. I think probably the biggest problem I see is just funding.
Funding.
Todd alone, how many breaks did we have last month?
Last month we fixed 43.
That's all?
That's all. That's 43 too many.
So we're replacing, but not, the way that we want to. And that's just because the lines are so old. When you don't have the funding to replace them, the way that you really want.
I remember the Lakeshore Drive debacle that you started fixing it and you couldn't find a solid piece of pipe for a long ways. So.
Yeah.
Question.
Question, maybe off the track, but this country is going through a fracking method of extracting oil and gas, and fracking uses a tremendous amount of water. How is that going to impact our drinking water, or where is that water coming from, where is it going? Is there any studies to show what's going to happen in 10 years? Because this is, right now it's not too much in Oklahoma, but it's coming.
Well, I'm not a scientist, but there's this discussion going on, and Derek probably knows more about this than I do, about when you use water for fracking and you inject it down into an injection well, that is water that's taken out of the water cycle. That will continue. I don't see any way that won't continue.
Oh, I agree. By 2025, they expect we're going to be the largest oil supplier in the world.
Well, what we need to do, I think, is and the state's really beginning to and us. We were sort of reluctant to the party because we were always a little nervous about it, but the use of processed water, treated processed water for things like irrigation, for golf courses, for those kind of things that you might be able to use. I think that the oil and gas industry is beginning to look at, rather than injecting that water down a well, they're beginning to look at recycling it, cleaning it up and recycling it to wells. The use of brackish or marginal waters for any number of purposes, waters that have little or no value because they're brackish, begin to use those in different ways. So I think the state's really beginning to take a strong look at those kind of, as Susan Patty has been big in water reuse. So do you have anything?
Well, I'll say from the water quantity perspective, and I know this is kind of maybe scare some people or infuriate, it doesn't use that much water compared to other uses of that water. You know, compared to agriculture, it's hardly a blip on the screen. But the problem is, of course, is that if it's deep well injected, it's lost for the foreseeable future. And so, you know, even when you use it for irrigated agriculture, you know, it does make it back into the system in our lifetimes, where if it's deep well injected, it's pretty much gone. You know, from my experience, we are just now starting to look carefully at the fracking issue in Oklahoma, both in terms of what the wastewater looks like, treatment technologies, and potential for contamination of our aquifers. I think the potential for contamination is real. Like most things in life, I think if fracking is done properly and done carefully, it probably has a place in our hydrocarbon search mix. It has a place there in the oil and gas business. But I'm afraid, also like most things in life, we're going to get some people that try to cut corners and not do it right, and it's going to cause a real problem that then would take that technology out of our exploration mix. So,
Ed, you had a comment?
Today I was at the northern, eastern portion of my district over Panama, Potable, I guess that's the right direction. Anyway, I was stopped by a place I usually visit at Panama, and they were complaining, I had complaints about their water bill, almost doubling. But as I looked into it, and I've got the rest of the Water Resource Board, you know, there are grants being made available for them to increase their storage. So when the whole picture is laid out, you know, yes, it's increased, but on the other hand, they're benefiting. And I guess a question I had, because of something we've had dealt with in Haskell County, and I thought maybe somebody might address it, and that's the balance between disposal, or discharge, I'm sorry, not disposal, discharge from your water system, consumption, and compared to consumption. I know in Stigler in particular, community is wrestling with, you know, the discharge being a problem to landowners adjacent and all the way into the Canadian River. But is there any concern that you guys have on how do you balance those two?
Steve Shop really does a great job on the regulatory side of permits. You know, this audience is educated and knows, but it's shocking to a lot of people, for example, to realize that, this is going to sound weird, you all are drinking the effluent from 1 million people at Lake Eufaula. We all live downstream of somebody. And so when people start to think, you know, well, once I flush the toilet or once it leaves my county, I don't have to worry about it anymore. We're really kind of all in this together. And we need to be mindful that groundwater and surface water and water quantity and water quality and wastewater and drinking water are all related in the fabric of water. And people need to pay attention to every thread in that fabric because it affects them.
You bet. Yeah,
And I was just going to, this dates me a little bit, but I was going to relate to what Steve said about consolidation. No, I'm not going to be, you know, that issue. But I remember as a young person growing up, and we had a local telephone community service. And needless to say, that's been long gone. And I think our service is probably better than too long than short.
That's because everybody listened to your conversation.
When I was a kid, we had an 8-party line.
Yeah. Well, I really feel sorry for those folks that didn't show up tonight. This has been awesome. It really has. Let's give these guys another round of applause. Super job, guys. I don't know if these guys can hang around for a little while or not, but you may want to visit with them a little bit. But anyway, and we still have coffee and cookies and water up here. So please help yourself. And thanks again for coming. Appreciate you. Those things work great.
Well,